So lately I've been struggling. I just feel like I'm spinning my wheels when I'm reading stuff, especially in like paper. I finished reading Eye of Cat by Rogers Lasny, which is incredibly strange. That book is bonkers and confusing, and I don't know how to feel about it. But anyways, I finished that, and I was like, what am I going to read next? And I had already waffled before reading that because I couldn't decide. I'm working on this history book, and it's like the most nerdy history thing ever. It's like a history of the economy of the 14th, 15th, and 16th century. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I'm reading it. Actually, I do know why I read it, because it's fascinating. You got to put aside the graphs and some of the economics nonsense, but it is an amazing history book. It's called The Structures of Everyday Life by Fernand Braudel. Yeah, it's Civilization and Capitalism, 15th to 18th century. And it's like, I don't know, it's some nerd stuff, but it's really good. It puts a lot of things in perspective that you don't really think about when you're reading like historical fiction or fantasy that takes place in that kind of era in history. Like there's always these blown out proportions in books. Like there were 50,000 soldiers on one side and they were facing off against 150,000 on the other. And it's like, no, it was like 10,000 mercenaries basically locked down Rome. It's like those numbers of 50 and 150,000 is just like not feasible in that historical setting. And it has led me to a lot of actuallys when reading fantasy. So I don't know if it's good for me or not. That thing is dense. So I usually read like a chapter at a time or a subsection of a chapter, and I'm slowly chipping away at it, and I'll get there. I couldn't figure out what to read. I had finished Kenneth Elmo, which was a great oral history biography of John Kennedy Toole and his mom, Thelma Toole, written by a friend of his, Joel Fletcher. And so like, that was great. And then I was like, well, I'll just move right on to Butterfly and the Typewriter, which is a more recent and very well done biography on John Kennedy Toole. And then I was like, I literally just did this. So I was engrossed in it, and I read like the intro and part of like the first section. And then I'm like, I can't do this again right now. I need to read something else. So then I pick up Ursula K. Le Guin's Steering the Craft. And I'm like, okay, cool. I love reading books about writing. Let's get into this. And I start reading it, and I'm like, this is something I need to read not before bed. That's another side thing. Like most of my reading, like eyes on paper, is before bed. So I'm like, this is something I need to read during the day when I'm like able to do these actual exercises. Like it's amazing, but I can't read that right before bed because I can't be like, oh, I'll just remember to do this tomorrow kind of thing. So I had to set that aside. I'm just like, what am I going to read? And I would grab books and I'd be like, no, I don't want to read that. And I'd grab other books. I'm like, no, I don't want to read that. And so eventually I just told my daughter, I was like, pick a book for me. Okay. I'll tell you if I've read it or not when you point at it. And once you pick something I haven't read, then we'll read that. And so she's like this. And I was like, I've read it. I've read it. So that went on. And then she finally picks out one and I'm like, I don't want to read that. She picks out another. It's like, I don't want to read that. I didn't know what I wanted to read. I could not decide. And so I don't know if any of you have this problem where you're just like, I'm overwhelmed by the books I have. I'm overwhelmed by my TBR, but I'm also not in the mood to read any of it. So eventually I just settled on like Eye of Cat, finished that. And then I'm like, well, what now? I ended up picking up a Ken Follett book, the Modigliani Scandal. And that book is awesome. So I'm reading that right now. And one of the reasons I'm reading that is because what I actually want to read is on my ebook reader. But I made the mistake of showing my wife how awesome it is to read ebooks. And so now she's reading the third book in the Black Company series, The White Rose, on our ebook reader, which means I don't have an ebook reader. So I'm having to make do with paper like a peasant. And so I'm reading the Modigliani Scandal, and it's been great. But what I really want to do is start chipping away at another Glenn Cook book. I really just want to read more Garrett P.I. It's so fun. I'm just loving it. But I can't really do that right now either, because I'm currently listening to 2 Reacher novels, and I don't want to do fantasy detective crime stuff and actual detective crime stuff at the same time, because I don't want to get them confused in my head. And then I'm like, well, then I'll just read this crime caper that somehow isn't interfering with my listening to Reacher novels. So I don't know what's going on. I just wanted to make a video where I just talked about how I can't make up my mind on what to read. I still want to read the final book in the Century trilogy by Ken Follett, but it's 1,100 pages. And I know when I'm done with it, I won't have any more of them and I'll be very sad. So I just keep putting it off and putting it off, and I'm going to get to it sooner than later. I finished a culture novel. It was awesome, but like, I don't want to read another culture novel right away. There's only 10 of them. When I'm done with them, they're all gone. I'm already going to be sad at the end of the year when I finish everything Glenn Cook has ever written. By the way, he has 52 novels and Stephen King has like 65. I thought that Stephen King was way ahead in that. I mean, Stephen King writes a bunch of chonkers while Glenn Cook's books are usually like a third the size. But every time I think of Stephen King and being like the most prolific and best-selling and all that, I just assume he has like 100 books or something, not 65. And did you know he's written 5 nonfiction books? One of them is about baseball. I didn't know about that. I'm buying a copy of that as soon as I can. It's about the 2004 Boston run for the World Series. So that'll be cool. And he has like a kind of semi-sequel to On Writing. It's called Secret Windows, and it's just a collection of like his articles and like essays and stuff about writing. And like his very first nonfiction book is Dance Macabre, and I have a copy of that. And it's just him talking about the genre of horror, like in every medium. So like, you know, books, film, television, all that stuff. So that thing is dense. I'm starting it, but I don't know when I'm going to finish it. It's a lot. And then I've got this other cool little thing. I don't know if I shared it, but I'm going to share it in this video because, you know, why not? RPG Saints Sketchbook by Wayne Reynolds. What he did was he took all of the Church of England saints in the year, like on the Church of England calendar or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a member of the Church of England. He just did the saints for each of those days, and he made them RPG characters. He does all the amazing cover art for like the core books for Paizo, and he used to do them for Wizards of the Coast for like D&D 4E. He has a ton of the covers on there. And then he did stuff back in D&D 3.5. He does magic cards, all that. It's just a super cool book. I don't know why I'm including it in here. I just thought I'd talk about it again because I like it. And yeah, at this point, I think I'm rambling. Any of you struggle with not deciding what to read or can't decide what to read? That analysis paralysis, getting buried by all your books? I feel like I'm finally on the path again, thanks to that Ken Follett book. I think I'm going to finish that and then take back my ebook reader. I need some Garrett P.I. in my life. So by the time I finish the 2 Reacher books and the Ken Follett book, I'll be ready for more crime fiction. Just happens to be fantasy. You want to watch some of my book reviews? I've got those in playlists. Same for book hauls and other stuff. I think the thing I've covered the most is Appendix N, and it has its own playlist. Go check it out. I think you'll like it, especially if you're interested in vintage science fiction and fantasy at all. And with that, I'll see you next time.